This motion from Sinn Féin, which I fully support, calls for a full public inquiry into the deaths of residents and the quality of care in nursing homes during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the purpose of any public inquiry is to establish the facts in regard to the specific circumstances. And of course, those circumstances include the fact that more than 2,000 nursing home residents have died due to COVID-19. And that means that over 40% of COVID-19 related deaths occurred in nursing homes. Those facts, along with the many different media exposés of totally inadequate care, neglect, and in some cases, abuse of residents, certainly makes the case for this public inquiry. So, as I said, we have to establish the facts. We need to look at the context. We need to evaluate the role of the very many actors involved in the care of those in our nursing homes. That includes the HSE and its response. It includes the management and the staff of the nursing homes. It includes the supports that were provided or not provided by the different state actors. It includes the role of HIQA, the role of hospitals in either discharging persons back to nursing homes and/or the protocols around patients from nursing homes with COVID-19 accessing acute hospital services. Now, I want to clearly state, in fact, very clearly state, I'm not pointing the finger of blame at any group or any sector or any individual, because the purpose of a public inquiry is to establish responsibility, not to prejudge, not to make assumptions about public or private sector, but to look at the evidence and only then to arrive at conclusions. Having held such an inquiry, we then need to put legislation in place to ensure proper adult safeguarding circumstances. All residents should have direct access to safeguarding social work services and all primary care services. And HIQA, I agree with the report when it says HIQA must be empowered to oversee and enforce safeguarding legislation. And there also needs to be legal right of entry and powers of investigation for the appropriate authorities. Care champions have reported over 500 serious safeguarding concerns in nursing homes in the last 14 months. They do emphasise not all nursing homes are negligent, but some are, and that's what we are highlighting here tonight. I've also received substantial documentation from bereaved families of Ballyknoe Nursing Home United for Justice group. They outline their key concerns. There are many, but they include lack of infection control, serious neglect of residents, lack of adequately trained staff, minimal communication with families during the COVID outbreak. In truth, it's hard to read it, but for the residents and their families, it was an awful, terrible time. But perhaps the most powerful point in the documentation that Ballyknoe sent me is where they say the public inquiry and HIQA investigation is not just for us, but for the other families around Ireland who are looking for answers. And it is also needed for the safety and well-being of nursing home residents in the future. Now, another important point that's raised in this motion is to place long-term residential care facility visitation guidance, and I emphasise the word guidance, on a statutory footing, and to give interim authority to HICWA to enforce it. I think, Minister, of all the emails that I received as a public rep during COVID and about COVID, I think the most heartrending were from family members who could not visit for months on end, and in some cases where loved ones died as they watched through the windows. Now, I'm not minimising the challenges faced by nursing home management. Those challenges were huge, and in some cases it was a matter of life and death. But if we had visitation guidance, and again I emphasise guidance, not definitive rules and requirements, because you couldn't have that, but if we had that guidance on statutory footing, I think we'd have some clarity on this matter. And to be honest, I think it would take some of the awful responsibility off the shoulders of management in some of the nursing homes. But for all of us receiving the emails, the phone calls, the pain and the grief and the unanswered questions of so many families, it just can't be ignored. And I think this motion contains many proposals that will help answer some of those questions, and it contains other proposals that I believe, if implemented, would help to safeguard some of our most vulnerable in long-term care. Before I finish, I do want to emphasise that so many nursing homes, so many staff gave of their all during this pandemic. They left no stone unturned when trying to protect their residents, their families, because that's how they viewed them. I spoke to many of these people during the pandemic as they struggled to ensure the best possible outcomes, whether that was around sourcing proper PPE, ensuring sufficient staffing levels, and many colleagues have spoken here about the challenges they faced. It was also about issues like ensuring access to acute hospital care where needed. Now, I know many staff and managers had sleepless nights and long days while trying to manage in this pandemic. And the truth is, very few people in this chamber would want to exchange places with those people and what they went through day in and day out. But tonight, we're speaking in a wider context and of the need for a public inquiry and subsequent legislation where appropriate. But as I said, it's important to recognise the reality of what happened, the good with the bad and the bad with the good. Finally, Minister, can I say, I have raised the issue of the discontinuation of the TAP, the temporary assistance payments to nursing homes. As you will be aware, every cent that's spent is itemised and accounted for, and in my view, and in the view of many in the nursing home sector, that money is still vitally necessary to continue to protect residents and workers in nursing homes. My final point, Minister, is we are still awaiting a report on the proper funding of our nursing homes. I think this is essential. I think we cannot deal with one part of the problem and ignore the rest. Nursing homes need to be properly resourced. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic cruelly exposed the fact that some need urgent investment. But tonight, in the context of what we're speaking about, I fully support the call for a public inquiry, while, as I said, recognising the massive efforts made by so many to protect many of our vulnerable in nursing homes.
Thank you, Deputy.